And we're live.
Boom.
Awesome. Good morning. Good morning. Good evening to everybody in Australia, but good morning to everybody else. Hope everybody's doing fantastic this morning. Hope everybody can hear me okay.
I can hear you okay.
I am awesome. Well, we want to make sure people in the live chat can hear us. I am JL, and welcome to another edition of the Four Beardsmen of the Apocalypse. With me, as always, Johnny O from the Plot Hole, Irish Demon, and PhD long swinging D Tony. So the man, the myth, the legend himself. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. We love seeing you guys here. Here in the States, it is very early in the morning, and of course, our Australian friends are joining us in the evening. And here we talk about the stuff that kind of enters our minds and various things like that. And of course, we hope to anything that you guys want to bring up in the chat, be sure to pop it in there. We love hearing what you guys say. I have something that I wanted to bring up. Yeah, this was interesting. Something that was brought up to me in a conversation I had with a friend. I wanted to run it by you guys. So the biggest issue that I see with the flat Earth, with the whole flat Earth thing, that pretty much has drawn us all into this community. These people cannot admit I don't know. They cannot say I don't know. Correct?
Yep,
I would say
that's absolutely correct.
That is one of their biggest problems: the lack of humility to admit when they do not know something. So, but something that was brought up to me, I found really, really interesting. So and I think I already brought this up to Johnny one time, but I'll bring it up to you guys. Our Irish Demon, PhD Tony, are you familiar with Nickelodeon?
Yes.
As in the cartoon channel, or
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. That is
yes, I grew up watching it. Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember a show called You Can't Do That on Television?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
I was reminded of it last week, and yeah, I do recall it now. Yeah.
Okay, so You Can't Do That on Television was an extremely popular show that ran for several years and was big time on that network. Huge viewership. I had to go back and look at the numbers. That show was massive. So what happened? Do you remember what happened on the show? If you admit, if you said, what would happen? What would have to happen to get you slimed on that show? The penalty was getting slimed, but in order for that to happen, what did you have to do?
Did you have to say I don't know?
Yes, you had to admit that you didn't know the answer to something.
All right.
And the penalty of that was getting slimed.
Wait.
And now here we are. 2020, decades later, and we have a generation of individuals who cannot admit this. Now, this is only one example, but I found it very, very telling that there was programming on a major children's network that penalized people for saying I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm not going towards the conspiracy thing. I don't want to jump the shark on this, but I found that incredibly interesting that there was a massive television show that catered to children that were generally in single digits or usually I would say 7 to 10, that openly penalized people for saying I don't know. Like it was a negative thing. Like it was a bad thing.
Well, I have something to say on this when you're finished.
And how that potentially could sit with people, kind of going forward in life. They always have that kind of sensation or that kind of nagging feeling in the back of their minds that admitting that you don't know something is a weakness, that it is bad, that you could be punished for that.
So it's not just that. It wasn't just that television show. If you, Jessica G, she's ragging on you again there, JL.
I see that.
But if you look at, I'm not sure how it was overseas in Australia or whatever, but if you look at the American education system, it is very much based on getting the right answer. And I forget who did there was a psychological study or sociological study or some study that was done by people in white coats that showed the positive reinforcement on the effort. This is the whole reason why that we got into that everybody gets a trophy thing, not necessarily focusing on the win but the effort. because in education we found that when we reward children for trying to answer a question, showing that they are willing to be wrong, and not chastising them for being wrong, and not overly applauding those who get the correct answer, that those kids are more likely and more adept to learning, to being corrected, to admitting that they're wrong, because it's not a big deal, right? I'm wrong all the time. Who gives a shit? Everybody's wrong. It happens. So
Yep.
that's where that whole like everybody gets a trophy, it's bullshit, and people get pissed off about that. But no, it actually works, especially in education.
Mm-hmm.
I will suggest that I don't think that flat earthers, or indeed society in general. I mean, I watch that show quite regularly, and I don't have any problem admitting that I can be and I am often wrong. So it's I think they were obviously playing it as an unreasonable thing to have happen. Actually,
Sure.
it was not being played as this person is admitting something and therefore they deserve to have slime. The slime was always presented as something that was actually quite unfair and unjust, but that made it funny on a different level. So, but I can see the point, and I do think that it is. A guiding intellectual theme for, say, JM Truth. JM Truth will just descend into barefaced lies rather than admit, well, I misremembered that, or I didn't know that, or
Yes. Yeah.
And so he has this terror of being wrong, and I think it has, I don't know where he got it from, but it seems to be sort of a primary driving force.
Yeah.
He will do anything to avoid admitting he was wrong.
There's a very interesting correlation. There's a few distinct studies done on it in the Journal of Neuroscience, and there is some studies done, I think it was in the University of Seoul in South Korea, about the effects of positive reinforcement in children, both children and teenagers, adolescents who display amotivation, which is obviously very common in teenagers nowadays, and also in adults who suffer with serious schizophrenia or other mental illnesses. And the interesting thing about it was they noted that in the past roughly 10 years, children and adolescents, because of their exposure to social media in particular, have suffered terribly with amotivation. The reason being, everything they see on social media is the perfect example of whatever it is that they want to be. So the most beautiful girl, or the most incredible sports person, or the wealthiest person with the Ferrari. So if they feel like they can't achieve that for whatever reason, then they don't actually even try. And it fits into the whole thing. It's like, okay, you might not be that person, or you might not be as good at a thing as that person is, but what you're doing and your participation in it is good enough. They don't see it that way. So this study looked at different groups throughout the world, and it's centered on South Korea in particular. We think we've got it bad in the Western world. South Korea is a nightmare for teenagers. The idea of perfect beauty, the whole K-pop beauty scene, it's just, kids are killing themselves because they're not pretty enough in their own eyes. Then you have the social media situation and the online gaming addictions in South Korea. Serious issue. And they're seeing this massive increase in just complete amotivation in adolescents because they're seeing everything as absolutely perfect. And if they can't be perfect, then they won't even try to be good or to be better at what they are doing. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, there's that all or nothing type of episode. All or nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's dangerous.
And so when they looked at the... It is, because when you look at the... so one of the study groups was people who suffered from non-drug-induced paranoid schizophrenia, because there's a massive difference in terms of the brain between drug-induced paranoid schizophrenia and non-drug-induced paranoid schizophrenia. So when you look at somebody with non-drug-induced, so it's more of an inherent trait, or it could be as a result of an injury or some other issue in the brain, they have a very all-or-nothing mentality. The idea is that if I can't do this thing, there's no point even trying. If I can't do it perfectly, there's no point even trying to do it well or trying to do it good. And this is what we're seeing with teenagers now. And it's really concerning to see that teenagers are beginning to act in ways that are kind of more in tune with somebody who suffers with paranoid schizophrenia. And it's scary, quite frankly. So I think, while I don't think maybe the Nickelodeon show in and of itself is the cause or whatever, it is one of many factors that are telling people you're not good enough, you're not perfect, so don't even try. And I think that's a huge issue. So yeah, it's just really interesting that somebody brought that up, because I was reading about this yesterday, so I was pretty chuffed that you brought that up.
Yeah, I found it to be really interesting, and obviously, correlation does not mean causation, but it got me thinking about other forms of programming and other forms of of television programming that might have been out there that might have just kind of seeded that. And young impressionable minds as they are, and education being what it is here in the States, that something like that would take hold, and then you combine that with the other elements of what kids are exposed to, and my opinion, religion being one of those things, that it is kind of an assault on the person's self-esteem, and without support structures to help people kind of rationalize and make sense of these things, that this is only entertainment, this is meant to be this is a parody or a spoof, kids can come away with the wrong idea. And given the time frames, now these kids are all grown up, and they're Grand Theft Auto educated, and getting their research on YouTube, and afraid to admit that they don't know something, because they view it as a weakness, that they'll be judged by that in some way they have failed as a human being, because they don't automatically have the correct answer or a right answer, or even an understanding of what they're talking about. And that concerned me. I was kind of like, that is a really, really strange coincidence that there was stuff like this out there on television. And I think I honestly think it's worse in the United States, because for some reason being humble in the States is I don't know why it's considered a weakness, but yeah, there's something interesting that came up, and I wanted to talk about something interesting, or something kind of interesting, because I just got, right before we went live, I just got done listening to the latest Cheeto conference, and where a reporter for ABC just asked this cat point blank, why did he lie to the American people? Since since the videos about Bob Woodward's book have come out, I'm so gonna buy that when it comes out.
Yeah, me too.
Because Bob Woodward, if there's any journalist out there that deserves respect, it's Woodward and Bernstein. But when I loved it, because he's out there, he's doing this whole thing, like that, and
how's it go again?
I could just make the noises and it sounds like him. And this ABC reporter asked him point fucking blank, why did you lie to the American people? And if you've ever seen a person look weaker trying to hedge their shit, and then immediately try to swing the blame over to China, like straight up, this is China's fault, it's the China virus, blah blah blah. It was fucking disgusting, and I've never seen I don't know if I've seen a human being try to hedge, and maybe JM Truth has tried to hedge his shit as much as President Trump does. So
that's hilarious.
I needed to get that.
The thing is, if Trump just for once, I don't think I've ever heard the man admit that he's been wrong, when he has been so many times. Where, like, there's so many videos of him going, I never said that, and then they immediately play the video of him literally saying that. He's like that's verbatim. Not what I meant. That's not verbatim. What I meant. Okay? Verbatim, exactly the words that he said he didn't say. Is that I never said that, okay? That's not what I said. It's China's fault, okay? And it's like, dude, if you just said, okay, look, I did say that, I fucked up, I'm sorry, I know better now. People might actually
yeah,
have a little bit
and
more respect for you.
the
Not
funny
much,
thing about
but
this whole situation is if he would just he has plenty of people that are plenty of avenue, lots of wiggle room. He said, look, at the time the information was telling me one thing, and that's what I went with. I went with the information was telling me. It was wrong. I made a mistake. Now we of course correct, but that's the problem, right? With Trump is that when he's wrong, he doesn't course correct. He just like doubles down on the stupid.
Yep.
That's the issue.
Yeah, he'd rather go on live television and compare himself to Winston Churchill or Teddy Roosevelt in trying to keep, or FDR trying to keep people. I was trying to keep people calm by maintaining an air of confidence, and it was like
they're putting on a massive show of like 10,000 people. More than that. How many people go to his rallies?
Like 4.
Tens of thousands. I don't know about that. But that's the whole thing. It's like I was trying to keep people calm, and then he puts on a rally and has thousands of people there, putting him in direct risk, knowingly. He knew that this thing. He says it himself in the tape. He can't deny that. He says it's really dangerous. And it's like, oh, sorry, Tony, go ahead.
I was just going to say that if he admitted to error, he wouldn't be president. Right? It's his ability to drag his voters into a fantasy world where they're never wrong and they never need to apologize for anything.
Yeah,
that's why he's president.
That's a very good point.
Oh,
so I think Jessica G is going to give you an extra point.
Skeptic Dank, I'm going to steal that. He thinks he's Churchill, but he's actually the Mango Mussolini.
So John Rapp said something earlier, and by the way, there you are. Said something earlier in the chat. His question was rewarding a flirt for being wrong. I think I'd rather. Let me get back to the exact quote here. Where'd it go? Where's John Rapp? There he is. Rewarding a flirt for being wrong doesn't sit right with me. I'd rather be willing to reward them for honesty or good character, or even just listening with their ears, not their mouth. I don't think anybody here is talking about rewarding somebody for being wrong. More so, rewarding for somebody for having or for making the effort to engage in the conversation. Now, I'm not so sure that would apply to flat earthers who aren't able, like we've got Rachie in the chat. She has been probably the most, I will say that she is the most intelligent flat earther that I've seen, simply because she will analyze evidence and accept other people's point of view and look at what they have to bring to the table that could alter what she believes or what she ultimately thinks. So that in that respect, I think that's where the reward should come from. It's like Rachel's willing to come to the table to learn something, accepting the fact that she could be wrong, but that being wrong isn't, oh my God, I can't believe I was wrong. I got to go, freaking smash my head into a brick wall. No, say I was wrong about something.
To reevaluate my life.
Right, I was wrong about something, but me being wrong and me being willing to share what I believe ultimately made me better because I learned something.
The thing that impressed me about Rachie, and really did impress me, was we were having during I think it was one of Irish's live. No, it was some live. Maybe it was Craig. But we were having a really, really awesome conversation about doing practical demonstrations of how objects in space time work, utilizing the idea of the trampoline and then objects sitting on the trampoline, things spinning around each other. And she demonstrated that she was able to adjust her world, adjust her viewpoint. Like, she was imagining it this way. So it's like, no, I had it in my mind as this. And it was like, oh, wait, you're slightly off there. Try adjusting it to look at this, look at this direction. She was like, now it makes sense. And she was like, okay, so that was the whole point. It's like she's able to adjust her viewpoint to take in other viewpoints as opposed to her own, just to experiment and test. To be like, oh, now I see what you're saying. That really impressed me, because she can be like, she's not just going to hold her position and hold it fast and die on that hill. She's like, there is other valid information out there. She's willing to admit that. And that was just, that blew my mind. I was like, holy crap. I think it's the first flat earther I've run into who is willing to say, Oh wow, you really do have a point there. Yeah, that's good information. I'm going to go with that, and I'll take that to its conclusion. There's like, respect, real respect for her.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
Yeah, Rachie, if you're not blushing right now, we can't be friends. Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just you make an excellent point, but I think that it's also I was on a live stream with Schrodinger's cat earlier today, where he had me and Jack Zhang, who's a mathematical physics student, and we were discussing the origin of where Schrodinger's cat came from, where his name came from, and a bunch of other science stuff. And one of the we were trying to explain it, and as we were explaining it, it became clear that either people in the audience were going to get it or they weren't, and not everybody in the audience really understood what we were trying to explain about Schrodinger's cat, or how it works, or that sort of thing. And it gets a bit. It led me to sort of consider the flat Earth expectation that if you're in a discussion with them, you have to be able to explain the entirety of physics all at once, right now, or you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you need to sort of challenge that mindset. Like, I got into a conversation with Anthony Riley where I was trying to explain how, unsupported objects experience a downward acceleration. And he said, well, not a helium balloon. And I said, well, they still experience a downward acceleration. They've just got other forces acting on them, right, that make it go up. And he's gone, well, that downward acceleration, is that Einsteinian or Newtonian? I've just gone, well, it doesn't matter. We're just going to treat it as a constant acceleration for the moment. And it's just, they don't let you build up your knowledge base in layers. They don't let themselves build up their knowledge base in layers. They want it all as one solid lump, and that's not how knowledge works.
Yeah.
You can't just have a physicist come over and vomit their physics knowledge into your mouth the way a parent bird does. That's not how knowledge works. You guys deadpanned that with impressive alacrity. That was meant to be funny, so.
Sorry, Tony.
And not to mention, demanding demonstrations that are impossible on this one. Because Tony's right that the one half that always gets me is like explain everything all at once, in the most succinct way possible, better than Neil deGrasse Tyson could possibly do it. With no errors whatsoever, like boom, right now.
But here's the thing:
it was
even if we did that, they would still reject. Oh well, no, I don't understand that. So obviously, it's wrong.
Right, or demanding a demonstration which they know to be 100% impossible because of where we physically are. Like, I want you to demonstrate the effects of gravity on an object the size of the Earth while you're standing on an object the size of the Earth.
Yeah.
It's like, are you out of your mind?
Make water stick to a ball. For fuck's sake.
Jessica G, Neil deGrasse Tyson is not a fallacy.
So those of you who don't know, Jessica G is my most favorite scorekeeper and referee ever.
I've just made a terrifying discovery.
Oh, what discovery is that?
I've just made a terrifying and disgusting discovery. Okay.
Nathan Oakley and Nathan Thompson sex tape.
It's more disgusting than that, believe it or not. All right, so I've got this cup.
Oh, wait a minute. Your follow-up to more disgusting than Nathan, the double Nathan, the ding dong to ding dong with the Nathans, is so I've got this cup.
Yep. It'll become abundantly clear.
You haven't heard the rest of this story yet.
So I've got this cup, my tea drinking cup. Here is the receptacle for the tea.
Wait.
And this metal piece sits inside the outer coating, right?
Okay.
As I was drinking my tea, I kept spilling it upon my shirt, and I couldn't figure out why, right? It turns out that there is a void between the outer plastic and the inner metal, which when I washed it is now full of dishwasher water, which I have been drinking and running down my shirt this whole time. Because it was empty and I turned it like to the side and a lot of liquid came out of the side and I can taste the soap in my mouth.
All right, so somebody's going to be shitting himself soon.
And I'm frankly disgusted. I cannot tell you.
It's still not grosser than the idea of Nathan Oakley docking Nathan Thompson.
I don't know, man.
I have to agree. You said it was more disgusting than that, and quite frankly, there needed to be some sort of bodily fluid.
Yeah. Well, there's about to be
involved in this story to achieve that.
I think Jessica G needs to give me a point back for that one. I think that's an equipment error. Jessica G's been scoring against myself and PhD Tony here. 9-0. That's bullshit.
Now it's 10-0.
Rachie brings up something I think we can settle real quick. She says, I can't get that you can't demonstrate water sticking to a ball because of the mass of the Earth. But then the Cavendish wouldn't work because of the mass of the Earth. Or Cavendish shouldn't work because of the mass of the Earth. It's actually different because in the gravitational pull of the Earth on the ocean itself, that's one. Basically, the Earth has its own gravitational well. And if you want to think about the effects of its gravity around itself, because we are inside that gravitational well, because we're physically on the Earth, any effect we can't demonstrate what's going on around us because we are inside that well. You know, if we had another object that was that large, we were outside of it, we could show and demonstrate that, but we can't recreate that like water sticking to a tennis ball or anything because the water and the tennis ball are also inside the gravitational well of the Earth.
Yeah,
that well acts upon those objects, making pretty much making that experiment impossible.
So Rachie's point about the Cavendish experiment, I think, ignores one of the important aspects of the Cavendish and the Schehelian experiments, which is that they're at right angles to Earth's gravitational field. Right, Earth's gravitational field pulls down, but that doesn't explain sidewards motion. And in the Cavendish and Schehelian experiments, you observe sideward forces being applied to things by nearby mass, and that's how you can distinguish between the two.
I was going to ask, isn't that why? I'm sorry, I was just going to say, isn't that why the Cavendish works? Because of it's designed to show the gravitational pull of the Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, Cavendish doesn't demonstrate the gravitational pull of the Earth. Cavendish demonstrates the horizontal pull of a large mass nearby near your target ball, and it applies a rotation to the wire. So that wire is rotating in a direction that's orthogonal to the pull of gravity, to the downward pull of gravity.
So Rachie, in that respect, when you have the two balls that are utilizing that are both being affected by the gravitational pull of the Earth. They're both being pulled downward towards the center, but the two of them also interact with each other as well. So, because one will have, despite the fact that they're much smaller, they will have an effect on one another. All mass has a gravitational effect on the mass around it, even if it's like so minimal that it's almost negligible. But it is still there, and that's what he was reflecting, because that yes, the gravitational pull of the Earth is down towards the center, but those two still have an effect on one another, and that's what he was measuring. Keeping it in that right plane. So the two are coming down like this, but they're still drawing very, very minimally towards one another as well. That's what he was demonstrating.
Yeah. And I think, if you just keep an eye on blue.
I'm sorry, I just saw Jessica G's comment.
She doesn't make.
What does she say now?
JL Warren is talking about balls in a PG forum.
Yep.
Oh man.
Of course, it's a technical foul.
Oh man. Yeah,
I question the legitimacy of this score.
The plot hole score is a point on JL Warren's 2 balls comments. She's my favorite.
But Rachie, I hope that explained it well enough. What Tony and I and everybody was talking about is that it's just a matter of looking at the experiment, making sure that you're seeing everything that the experiment is taking into account. Because flat earthers will bring this up and they will leave data points out of that argument and only focus on specific points. They cherry pick everything. Only the things that can go to support their own narrative, and so they'll leave points out. And if they admit, if they kept everything in, they'd understand what we were talking about. But when we try to add those in, they'll just say we're being disingenuous. So I hope that did explain everything for you.
Daryl M., this is also true. That is a fact. This is a fact.
Yes, it's true. This is true. See, I think that's why, because PhD Tony is smaller than the three of us, and we all have lives.
But he was voted. No. He was voted the most sexy.
He was voted the most sexy. But apparently, sexy does not have a gravitational effect.
Look at his fucking face. Seriously.
But sexy,
exactly. Wait, Irish. You just said it, right? You just said it. Look at his fucking face. We were like, wow, I'd fuck that. No, they look at that like, I would fuck that face.
Oh, PhD Tony makes me thirsty as fuck. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Irish. You look like Red Pill.
Oh, jeez.
Until you throw that shit out nice and thick, you're gonna look like the.
Okay, we got so Rachie is posting this is a I think this is PhD Tony. This is directly for you. She says, "Thanks, I get that, but the mass of a mountain should technically pull things." Into it as that's a bigger mass, so bigger pull, but we don't observe that except that my eyeballs don't work very well.
That last statement is so yes, mountains do actually attract do have a sideways gravitational attraction. It's just not big. If you look at the Schehalian experiment, they were only talking about a fraction of an arc second, so they were able to detect, a few 3,600ths of a degree deflection towards the mountain, just because the gravitational constant is that small. But the Earth weighs 10 to the power 32 kilograms, so that's that's 10,000 billion kilograms. I think, is it 10 to the 32? No, I think not sure.
But I think you're right on that.
But it's just an incredibly massive amount, and the deflection from true vertical due to say a mountain range is actually quite small. But it has been confirmed for say the Himalayas. When they did the Great Trigonometric Survey of India, for instance, they did exactly the same thing. They detected the deflection of plumb bobs by the mountain range. So to suggest that this result only holds for the Schehalian experiment is not in fact valid. It does hold more generally, and actually you can detect that you can, if you look at a map of Earth's gravitational field, you will see that it is not uniform in strength, which means that the gradient of that cannot always be downwards. It must point off to the side. It must point slightly off to the side at points where it is non-uniform. There's non-zero gradients in gravitational acceleration.
So, Rachie, I think in essence, if you, I think the best way, one of the best ways to look at it, if you're running an experiment and you're on the Earth, and imagine that you have a ball over here to your left, and that ball has the mass of Mount Everest, okay? And then over here on the right, you have a smaller ball that you then drop towards the Earth. Now, that object that you're dropping is going to fall at the rate of acceleration towards the center of the Earth, but as it passes by the larger object, the much larger object to the side, the one that has the massive Mount Everest, you will see a trajectory change that's very, very small. Tony was saying it, how it's very, very tiny, but you will get a trajectory change on the small one just from coming into the gravitational well of the object with the massive Mount Everest. And it's very, very negligible because obviously the gravitational effect of the Earth is acting on both of those objects, pulling them towards the center. So you will see a very tiny shift as one passes the other before it reaches the Earth itself.
Okay, yeah, 10 to the John Rapp corrects me at 6 by 10 to the 24. I must be thinking of solar masses in 10 to the 32. Yeah, so it's that if you look at a mountain, a mountain might be, what, 1 billion kilograms, or, that'd be a big mountain, or, that's still 10 to the minus 15 times what the Earth weighs. It's even as massive as a mountain range is, in terms of the overall mass of the Earth, it's still a small amount. So you've just got to wrap your head around the scale of it. We think of gravity as being a strong force. It's only strong because Earth is so heavy. Actually, gravity is quite a weak force in absolute terms.
And that brings up two things. Like one, what? Did you say something else?
Jessica G said that she was away from the keyboard, but she Plot Hole and I have been making good points while she was away. So yeah.
So this brings up and going on that, Rachie, I think that goes to the point that as far as what Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying, that if you were to project the Earth, as far as the effect of the crust on the Earth and how, this is how to put into perspective how small we are, how little mass we have, how little mass the crust has compared to the majority of the Earth. If you were to reduce the size of the Earth, or the Earth to the size of a cue ball, and you were to run your finger over it, it would actually feel smoother than a cue ball itself. It is the crust is so small and so thin compared to the rest of the Earth itself. It's almost negligible as far as smoothness goes. From the height of Mount Everest to sea level. So it's negligible when compared to the actual mass of the planet.
When you mentioned that, actually, there's a really interesting thing you can look at just to get an idea of scale. If you were to look at a very, very sharp razor blade in your hand, let's have a look. Like this right here, right? When you look at a very sharp knife, it looks perfectly flat at this distance. If you go, I would say to anybody who's interested, go and have a look at what a very sharp knife looks like under a microscope. And I think you'd be very surprised. And it's a very similar thing. At a very close level, you see the bumps and the canyons, the exact same as you do in a knife, as you do on the planet. A mountain versus the size of the planet is quite small. And likewise, now this is probably, obviously a knife wouldn't be as bumpy as the planet, for example, at that scale. But have a look, everybody. I would just say go open a window and Google what a knife's edge looks like under a microscope. And if you have just given PhD Tony another point, Jessica G, bite me.
Well,
real quick,
she has a point. YouTube doesn't like knives.
That's true. Rachie, never apologize for asking questions because you are doing it honestly, and I can appreciate that. It's when people ask questions with an agenda other than seeking out information or truth.
Yeah, so I've had a couple of debates, and thinking back on them, one of the things that I actually quite resent is so somebody with my level of expertise, we would actually charge $200 an hour for tutorials, right? So if somebody wants to discuss science with me, and I say, okay, I'll discuss science with you, I'm already bringing something that they wouldn't normally have access to. And if they're just going to do that to waste time and try and score rhetorical points, it's actually a bit annoying to me. It was one of the things that really upset me about Bart K a couple of weeks ago was, actually my time has value, and you've brought me here to waste it. So fuck you, dude.
Yeah, you get him, Tony.
As was just being explained, if they're honest questions, and they are, the person asking them is trying to learn something, that's a completely different kettle of fish. That's where I'm more than happy to give away something that other people might put financial value on.
Have you written a book there, Tony?
No, I haven't written a book.
I'm gonna lift the lid on the one that he is working on, called Irish Demon Taught Me Everything I Know.
It's a pop-up book, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a picture book. Mostly just pictures of me, in a kind of a Kim Jong-un fashion, just like looking triumphantly over my lands. Somebody said in the chat that something about me having a gun.
What? Is that truth?
Said
truth?
He's in Australia. We don't have guns. I actually do have guns, but I have them legally, first of all, and they're sports guns. But
what's the difference between a sports gun and a gun?
So it depends. Like the pistol, for example, the 22 is strictly a target shooting pistol. It's one shot at a time. And it's just used for sports only. You wouldn't hunt with it or, go after people with it. A rifle, I guess you could use for hunting or sports, but generally guns in Australia are reserved for hunting, sports shooting, and you can't shoot targets in the shape of humans, which is a rule. I don't know if it's a law, but it's kind of an unwritten rule, I guess, in the shooting community. And but yeah, you can't carry a weapon for protection, be it concealed or open, in either way. And yeah, that's just very rough guide on Australian gun laws. Thankfully, we don't really need to carry firearms. So
you mean you're not afraid of a tyrannical government coming to take you over?
Oh my God, it's like the Wild West here in Texas.
Western Australia can't even get roundabouts right, so I'm not worried about them coming. Quite honest.
Neither can Texas. Just putting that out there.
Oh man, it's unreal. It's unreal.
But something else that popped to my head that I know Rachie may have heard somebody ask is that in some live chat, God, they all just blend together. They're so stupid. Some flat earther was saying, or I think it was Nathan Thompson was saying, that show me, or no, it was somebody else that I wound up arguing with on the flat Earth community thing. Was someone saying, show me people upside down in Australia, or show me this, and I'll believe that. And I was like, okay. And the best way, and I wanted to bring this up to Rachie because I know Rachie may have heard this question before, is like, why can't we get pictures of upside down people in Australia and stuff like that? And it's all about how gravity works. But to put this in perspective, and I was thinking about this, like, so Rachie, if you imagine the Earth, and here's the Earth, like, say you're in a spaceship, really, 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 really far away, like Jupiter distance, okay, just out there in space. And if you were to, it had a camera that could zoom all the way into Earth, okay, just from where it's sitting. And you zoom it all the way. Now, obviously, this is impossible. But if you were to zoom this camera all the way into to where you could see people, okay, depending upon the angle that you look at the Earth, you actually would be able to see that, because you physically are outside of the gravitational well of the Earth. So your perspective is not down where your feet are down and then your head is up because of where you are on the Earth. So if you were to, like, because remember, there's no up and down in space. So if you were to adjust and fly, kind of like, look around the Earth from that, just from that angle, you could actually look at the Earth and see people walking upside down, because their down is not your down, because there's no down in space, there's no up in space. So you could actually look and see upside down people if you were far enough away from the Earth, looking directly at it at the appropriate angle. You could see the tops of airplanes as they're flying by, or you could see them fly upside down, because the people on that plane, your down is not their down. Their down is to the effect of gravity on the planet. But you have to be far enough away from the Earth in order to view these things from that angle. So it can be done. We obviously just do not have the technology to do that. But that is how you would see those things.
That means it's all fake.
Asking people to say, well, why can't satellites do this? Why can't satellites get these images? Because that's not how satellites work, and satellites are still affected by the gravitational pull of the Earth because they're in orbit of the Earth. So gravity still affects them. So the satellite's down is our down as well.
Well, I mean, if Himawari could focus in tightly enough, you'd see people at one. People standing up at one end and people upside down at the other. But obviously, Himawari is far away and it doesn't have the resolution necessary, because that would be impractical. There is actually. I'm going to take issue with the very suggestion, in the sense that it's one of those things where a lot of flat earthers ask, well, why don't you just do this thing that would cost billions and billions of dollars to prove that the Earth is round? Because we already know that it's round, and we're not prepared to dedicate billions of dollars to it.
Why don't you have a camera taking a picture of the camera taking a picture of the Earth?
Yeah, I mean, it's you would be surprised how little thought the average university academic gives to teaching people that the Earth is round. It's not a priority for them. They've got better things to do with their research funding. And if you go up to a research institution and say, I just want a few $100 million to prove that the Earth is round, they will perhaps let you out of the room without kicking you in the nuts first. There's this expectation that, well, you could prove the Earth is round by doing this. Yeah, but we don't have to, because there are already a million proofs. So it's just something that, and the other thing about it is, I'll believe if I see this. Well, actually, that's not how science works. You don't get to pick what evidence you get. You get the evidence you end up with. I can't see an electron, I can't see a proton, and I can't see a neutron. It would be a lot easier if I could see these things, because then I could better understand how I could have a better understanding of how atomic structure works. But I can't see them because that's just a physical constraint. So we have to come up with other ways of working around it. If I said I'm not going to believe in an electron until I see one, I'd never believe in electrons, because I'm never going to see one. Saying I'm only going to believe something if this happens is kind of like a 6-year-old stamping their feet and demanding an ice cream or a pony. It's not how science works.
It's kind of like one of the things that I always think about when people are saying, "Oh, you need to show me a picture of this, otherwise it doesn't count," or whatever. Like, it's kind of like a blind person, right? If a person was born, they never saw anything in their life. As far as they're concerned, nothing exists because they can't see it. They might be able to feel certain things, but anything that's outside of what they can touch or smell or hear, or I guess they're the only things they can do. If they can't see it, it doesn't exist. So if you're in Ireland, for example, you're blind, you can't see America, you've heard about it, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't touch it, so therefore it doesn't exist. So you need to look at the other ways that you can justify to yourself that that does exist, by trusted sources, by reading about it, hearing stories about it, talking to people who have direct experience about it. For example, as Tony was saying, I can't see Wi-Fi, but I know it's there because I have my computer in here and a Wi-Fi hub out there, nothing connected to the wall. I can't see it, but I know this. If I pick up my phone and ring Mrs. Demon and ask her for a cup of tea, she will text me back and say, "Get fucked, make it yourself." That is because of a technology that neither of us can see, and there's ultimately no way that we could ever see it or smell it or touch it or taste it. And so I think people need to get over that hang up. And not only that, but we actually have provided visible physical evidence, photographs from the moon, photographs on the way to the moon, photographs from the ISS, photographs from the Himawari and other satellites, but they just say, that's not good enough for whatever reason. They just say that doesn't count. And it's like, well, what do you need from us to prove then? If we have a satellite that's taking amazing photographs of Australia and Japan and all of that region of Asia, every 10 minutes it's beaming back these live photos. I myself did a test where I sat here, well, not here, in my kitchen, and I knew there was a cyclone coming. I looked at it. I watched the Himawari satellite. I watched the cyclone come across the Indian Ocean, and I was able to tell Mrs. Demon, based on how long it took, how quickly that cyclone would hit. And within a space of like 20 minutes, I was pretty spot on. The rain started. Clouds came over the hill in the direction that I expected them to come over the hill. And people say, oh, it's because of ground-based radar, and they upload all these fake images to all of the satellites. It's like, come on, man. Yeah. Like, that's so unreasonable. Photographs. We have probably in the hundreds of thousands, if not now millions of photographs from space, and every one of them is fake. They can't show me one where they say this is definitely fake, where there's like a cable in the background or something holding up a fake moon. They can't do it. They can't show me that. They have millions.
The moon is a high definition projection on the dome.
No, it's a simulator.
I heard that one recently.
So just a quick update. Jessica G says, shaming people that are blind with a little giggle. Irish pill philosophy loses a point.
Irish pill philosophy. See, now he knows how I felt last night.
Okay.
That's a T foul.
Hey, I get to make those jokes. I'm visually impaired myself, so I get to make those jokes. We had a dog come by the other day who's blind in one eye, same eye as me. He's blind in the left eye. Brand new puppy, and the lady was asking, any ideas for a good name for the puppy, and I was like, well, definitely Odin, because Odin, the Norse god, lost one eye so that he could have all the knowledge of the world. And I was like, that's a perfect name for that dog. I was like, and just like me, I lost one eye and I've got all the knowledge in the world. So that's perfect. That's how I managed to teach PhD Tony everything he knows. Just wanted to, so that's surely at least 1 point, Jessica G. Come on.
You done messed up now.
I'm going to point out something. One of my favorite things that I've recently discovered is if you go onto YouTube and you search for 1965 Gemini 4 NASA, it will bring up a video, and if you go to 5 minutes into the video, there's 1965 footage of spacewalks with a spherical Earth with a round Earth in the background, and again, I'm going to emphasize 1965, right? Not a computer, the CGI was not a gleam in anybody's eye. There wouldn't have even been anyone with any skills in it. Go watch a 1965 science fiction show and tell me that they had the skills to fake what they're showing in there. It's just not possible.
And
you talk about
they were hiding the technology. They were clearly hiding the technology from us so that they could use it to trick us into believing that the Earth is a globe. Because everything that happens in humanity and human history is solely to trick us into believing that the Earth is a globe.
Right.
Nothing exists for any other reason, apparently. So, but I just put a link in the chat to what Tony was talking about.
Yeah,
That's a beautiful
I
video.
gotta go on that. You bring that up. Everything is solely designed to trick us or make us see, the world a certain way. And you gotta think, you gotta ask, what the hell is the purpose of that? The majority of flat earthers will descend on that. The purpose of this is because the governments of the world are satanic and they're trying to hide the creator or hide God from us. And God being a subjective experience, God is revealed to the individual by their experiences, and therefore you can't technically hide the creator. But the Catholic Church is the most powerful institution on this planet. So even greater than the vast majority of governments, or they influence the vast majority of powerful governments. So the line of thinking is contradictory on that. The governments are lying in order to convince us, in order to hide the creator. Yet one of the most powerful institutions on the earth that influences many governments is a religious institution. So which one is it?
Well,
that's a good point.
They would. A lot of them will suggest explicitly that you cannot trust Catholicism, and that the Vatican is a sinister organization out to
convenient.
Speaking as an ex-Catholic.
So you're not a lapsed Catholic.
I think I'm more aggressive than a lapsed Catholic, so I'm going to.
I just know there's a lot of that mentality where it's like once a Catholic, always a Catholic. You're just a lapsed Catholic.
Right.
That's like a mafia thing, though, right? If they won't let you out,
you're never technically out.
There's Godfather Part 3 quotes coming in. Yep. So yeah, but it's when you get into this sort of conspiracy theory mindset, which seems to be quite prevalent, particularly amongst the higher profile flat earthers, it really, you start moving into mental health territory. They've disconnected themselves from reality.
Mm-hmm.
Basic trigonometry says that I'm a prolapsed Catholic.
Like an inside outside.
Oh, Jesus.
As opposed to an amateur lapsed Catholic.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh, Jesus.
Unreal.
On that note, I'm going to grab some more coffee.
Yeah, I'm going to go get a cold cane.
Actually, I got to let my dogs in. 2 seconds. Feel free to keep them entertained, Tony.
It's all right, Tony. You guys have never heard me sing, otherwise you'd realize that that's some form of terrorism. Yes, okay. So, Dara O'Brien says he's a Catholic atheist. Yeah, I can see that. Being an Australian Catholic became particularly challenging because our Cardinal George Pell managed to turn the Australian branch of the Catholic Church into an organization for the propagation of evil. He was just a nasty sack of something not nice. There you are. Who else is saying something? All right. Somebody dance for us, Tony. I don't know. I used to dance. I used to be a
pole dancer.
No Polish heritage at all.
Just for you, Body of Christ.
Oh, okay.
This might take a minute. It's dry. It's funny when you were saying about being a Catholic atheist. It's like in the book, I think it was Hitch 22 by Christopher Hitchens, when he said that when he was in Northern Ireland, he was approached by a gentleman in the street, and he goes, "Are you a Catholic or a Protestant?" And he says, "Oh, neither. I'm an atheist." He goes, "Aye, but are you a Catholic atheist or a Protestant atheist?"
You suddenly reminded me.
Really good crackers. I just want to say.
You suddenly reminded me, Irish, that I don't know if you got a chance to listen to it wasn't really a debate, the shit storm that I got involved in on the plot hole against that one theist who was, his point was that Christians are being persecuted around the world.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know if you happen to listen to that, but one of the points he brought up in that, and I was hoping that you would listen to it because you would have a
When
sample.
was that? When was that, Joe?
Johnny, when was that? That it was a couple
3 weeks
ago.
ago. Yeah.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Yeah. So this guy
was it on the podcast, or sorry for interrupting?
Yeah, it was on the podcast.
It was on the
but
website.
It's on my channel now. The highlights, which is the entire.
Cool. I'll bring that up. I'd love to watch it.
And the one thing I bring up was that he brought up that the Catholic Protestant issue in Ireland. Because we brought that up as an example of Christians persecuting Christians, and he said no, that was a political thing.
There was, I mean, that's a hit and miss one because it is a matter of sectarian violence in Northern Ireland, but it does go hand in hand with the political element of it, loyalist versus Republican. Generally, Republicans are Catholics and generally loyalists are Protestant. Of course, one of our most famous Irish Republicans of all time, Theobald Wolftown, he was a Protestant, so it's not, the rule. So there is definitely a political element to it. I would say it's 50-50. But if you were a Catholic and a Unionist in Northern Ireland, you would still be picked on for being a Catholic. You know what I mean? And you would be seen as a Catholic.
He was trying to boil it all the way down to being a solely political movement, which is 100% dishonest.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there was no example. Wrong. There was no example of Christians persecuting Christians in that.
That's bullshit. Bullshit. Catholics in Ireland during the British occupation in the earlier years more so were persecuted solely for being Catholic. It had obviously the political element was there, and again, generally Catholics were Republicans, which again, I always have to stress, Irish Republicans and American Republicans are two totally different things. Because I've had that shit before where I said that I was an Irish Republican. People, I'm never listening to your channel again. You're a Republican Trump supporter. And I'm like, different country, same word, different thing.
Right. Yeah, don't you know that trunk doesn't mean the same thing? Mm-hmm.
Well, where I come from, a Trump is a fart.
No,
so,
trunk.
Which is
trunk.
the same thing.
I was trunk.
Oh, trunk. Yeah, that's that word that you Americans made up for the boot of a car.
We didn't make it up. We just, because if you think about what is a trunk? Think about it. What is a trunk? It's a place where you...
trunk is a large case for
carrying your bullshit, right?
Clothing.
So if you look at the...
Trunk is a big sniffy tube on it. It's a big sniffy tube on an elephant long before it was a fucking box.
Is that the scientific term? Big sniffy tube?
That's like in the Mighty Boosh, where he's like, this is when they're in the zoo in the Mighty Boosh, and he's giving people a tour. And he goes, this is long-nosed, big, gray, fat man. He goes, don't you mean an elephant? He's like, yeah, if you want to use the Latin.
So back in the States, when we invented the car, what do you think we put in the back of the cars? That's why we call it a trunk.
Bullshit. Mike Raptor said, I'd suggest not using the word Republican, even though I know what you mean. Nah, I mean, the Irish Republicans have been around a lot longer than American Republicans, so I think it's our word. Oh, yeah, of course. They've been around for 800 years. I wouldn't necessarily say they were trying to set up a republic in 1200 AD. I don't think that could be but when you look at say Republican politics in Rome, for instance, or the end of the Republic, or the welfare of the Republic, it has a more technical sense.
Daryl, we're not butchering.
So,
Americans are not butchering the English language. We're just making it better. We're
Yes,
making
you are.
it better.
Push.
We get rid of unnecessary U's, okay?
I don't you know the cookie to biscuit or the chip to fries and you know, but you know, we call it a trunk because that's where you put your trunk. You put your trunk in the back. In old, you know, model, you know, the Model T and everything, there was an area for lashing your trunks to the back of the car before there was a storage space, and that's where that's where it comes from. You know, but why a boot? Why call it a boot? I've never gotten that connotation.
Don't ask me. I'm not English. This disgusting language was forced upon my people. So I don't claim it.
Funny you say that. It was forced upon my people too.
Simpler answer is I just simply don't know. But I'll use the Republican answer. I'll blame the
That's
English.
fake news.
Everything. It's my island.
Steven is my name.
I'm the most wanted man on my island. Come on, leave me in, somebody.
Historical philosopher. At the plot hole, that's debatable. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. English was made better by the American people. Because we're lazy. We remove unnecessary words. Like boot.
So, I'm curious, because we had a big talk about it last time.
Sorry.
We had a big talk about, you know, as far as politics goes. I don't think we need to dive into a huge political thing, but I am very curious. Given, or I would say, what effect do you guys think that Woodward's book, given Woodward's credibility, Bob Woodward's credibility, that his involvement, you know, in exposing things like the Watergate scandal and how amazing he's been as a voice for truth and reason here in the States for so long. Now this book has come out, and now it is irrefutable. There is no hedging when it comes to it. The Cheetolini lied to the American people, like legitimately. The evidence is there and it's obvious. It is now blatant. Do you think that this will have ramifications? And I know that other people are going to have books. You know, Cohen's got his book, and the guy that looks like the national security advisor. I can't remember his what was his name. Former national security advisor.
Bolton.
Yep. Bolton. Yeah, Bolton's got his book. But this one I think will have some. I think it will have some ramifications as far as the upcoming election goes. But what do you guys think?
Because here's the thing. When you're talking about I am not a crook, what you had at that time was a Republican Party that was willing to admit that some bullshit was done. Had today's Republican Party been in power at that time, Nixon would not have. He wouldn't have needed to resign. He would not have been impeached. If he was impeached, they wouldn't have convicted him. But the Republican Party at the time looked at him and said, "Hey, you committed a crime. We will convict you. That will happen." And then they gave him the opportunity to resign. But today's Republican Party won't do that because, on the flip side, today's Democratic Party won't do that to a Democrat either. There's that super massive split between the two parties that nobody's really willing to reach across the aisle, which is detrimental.
It's that tribalism.
That's Go ahead, Tony.
So I want to point out something here, which is that you can mathematically chart the progress of the breakdown of cross aisle negotiations, and it's definitely a right wing phenomenon. So Newt Gingrich basically decided that wasn't going to happen anymore, and since he decided that, the Republican Party has implemented a number of policies making election funding contingent on towing the party line. So you can't, cross aisle voting has decreased. But it's a result of the right moving further right. It's not a result of the left suddenly deciding that they're going to take their bat and ball and go home. It's that the GOP decided to take their bat and ball and go home. So when they're which is not to say that I think that the Democratic Party are in any sense perfect. It's just that the Republicans are responsible for
Sure.
that trend. But I just wanted to get back to Woodward's book. I don't think it's going to have any effect.
None whatsoever.
Because I think that everybody's pretty much already. I can't see how anybody is still undecided, right? And the people who still support Trump aren't going to care about this. They live in a fantasy land where this sort of thing is somehow irrelevant. So they're not going to be swayed by it. Any alleged neutrals who haven't already decided, they're not actually neutral. They're just waiting for some excuse to vote Trump.
Yeah.
Absolutely hit the nail on the head.
To answer Rachel's
100%
question, Rachel said, "What happened if nobody voted?" Well, if the entire American population went out and did not vote, the Electoral College would then take it upon themselves to cast votes for whom they think they represent. So somebody would be elected anyway, which is one reason why I think we need to get rid or change how the EC works. This all or nothing bullshit is not representative. It's not a representation of what the population wants.
The system was put in place, colonial
It's antiquated.
times. I mean, this is an old. It's horrifically antiquated, and given our population spread and where our population densities are, you cannot, the electorate cannot fairly look at, unless there's a massive change within the electorate and how it looks at things and how it counts votes. But ultimately, I've always been one vote equals one vote. That's it. And that the people should be voting for what the people want. And it was only because of the electorate system and how, in the antiquated way, it views the value of specific votes in specific areas is the reason Trump won. That's the only reason. Otherwise, if you took the electorate out, Trump would never have been president, because the people did not want him as president. Hillary Clinton took that popular vote by over 3 million votes, and still the electorate gave to him because it was key specific little areas that he won in. And that was, I mean, the only reason he did. But still, the people didn't want him, yet he still got it. That's the ridiculousness of the electorate. The
biggest
college
argument against going towards the popular vote is, well, if we do that, then only certain states like California, New York, etc., will elect the president. Well, we have that thing right now, right? So we have what they call swing states, and if you don't win Florida, if you don't win Michigan, if you don't win Ohio, there are certain states that are huge focuses of all the it's the same thing. We have the exact same thing, just in a different format. What the Electoral College does is it says that my vote in Texas, because of our population, doesn't count as much as somebody's vote in Wyoming, for instance. A Wyoming person's vote counts 7 to 8 times more than mine does. And here's the thing: if you don't want to get rid of the Electoral College, and I'm okay with that idea. What then needs to happen is each state needs to be broken down into realistic, non-gerrymandered districts who get, if you want to say, well, Texas has, I forget what it is, 18 electoral or 22 Electoral College votes. Instead of saying, well, if we get a little majority, if all the districts vote, or if we have more Republican districts vote Republican, then the Republican candidate gets all the votes, instead of saying, because that severely discounts the high populated areas of Dallas, Houston, that are blue counties, that are blue cities. It says that, well, your vote doesn't count as much as, Lampasas, Texas, that has a population of 150 people. Instead of doing so, what we need to do is break up those votes into reasonable districts. That way it's not all or nothing. That'll be at least a little bit more representative of what the people voted for.
So so Nerd Angle is making the point that you want to be in a democracy until you're in the minority, um, which to some extent I understand, but the alternative is that the majority are held captive to the wishes of a minority, which doesn't seem equitable either. So and I don't see how that's justified. And the example that women only got the vote because of a vocal minority, no, that's a historical simplification. Women got the vote because they were economically constructive forces during World War One, and the labor. The labor that they supplied was strategically valuable, and people weren't going to put up with it. Also, a lot of European countries suddenly found out that they didn't have as many men as they used to have. Somehow they died. Who knows how? But so I kind of think that the arguments that you're presenting there aren't really as robust as perhaps they could be.
And Rachie asks, she does pose an interesting question. She says, "Why is it always a bad choice?" Yeah. She says it seems like in England it's always two, the whole lesser of two evils argument rears its ugly head yet again. And the problem with that question is we need to stop looking at just the two main candidates, right? We need to stop looking at just Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. We need to look at the ramifications of either re-electing Trump or electing Biden. And the biggest one that I want to point people to is Justice Ginsburg. She will not make it out of the next election. She will not make it out of the next 4 years. She is either going to pass or she's going to retire. One of the two. Who do we want selecting that justice, that Supreme Court justice? Do we want Donald Trump, who put the Mr. I like beer, and here's my calendar showing me drinking beer? Or do we want to have somebody who says, look, I may not be the best person to single-handedly select the next justice. Let me put a panel of people together who can find somebody who is representative of
Merrick Garland.
I think there's a Rachel, of course, is English, so her choices were Boris Johnson,
British Donald Trump,
and basically British Donald Trump. Yes, somewhat with a better vocabulary. Yeah.
He has one of my favorite political moments of all time, though. I will give him that, if nothing else. One of the best ever insults that I've ever heard a person bestow upon another. Yeah. When he was the mayor of London and he was brought into the chamber and they refused to ask him questions, and he called them, and I quote, great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies, and then stormed out. I was like, that is
pretty cool. Yeah.
Epic. That is epic. Epic fucking thing.
This is
anyway.
You're talking about I can only think of him as British Trump. What is his
Boris?
Yeah.
Boris Johnson. John Oliver's expose on Boris Johnson. The clever like a fox Boris Johnson. Whereas he's Trump if Trump actually had intelligence and awareness. That it's a very it's a cultivated image that he gives to the British people. Yeah. If the people around him talk about this, that the whole before he'll spend hours in a makeup chair, and then right before he goes on camera, he'll mess his hair up.
Yep.
In order to convey a particular appearance. To
I'm
the people.
One of you. I'm one of you. Look, I have messed up hair too. Yeah.
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 Or wearing clothes that that look goofy together, or getting stuck on a zip line. Oh, look at me. That these are all things that he does in order to play to a specific
contrived.
And exactly. Whereas Trump, it's what you see is what you get. That's it. But Boris is crappy as fuck.
Oh yeah, Boris Boris is a very highly educated individual. He knows what he's doing, and he's doing it well in terms of it's having the desired reaction. But yeah, some of the things he said. If you go back over some of the things Boris Johnson has said, over the past, say, 15 years in public office, for example, are frankly shocking. I mean, like, referring to, and I'm paraphrasing and quoting, so it's obviously not my view. He referred to Asian people as Orientals and things like, just all of these little jabs, and it's like he does it in this kind of I'm just having a laugh kind of a way, and everybody laughs, and it's like, no big deal. But it's like, no, I mean, this guy is intelligent enough to know that you shouldn't speak like that. You know what I'm saying?
I think there was a video of him when something was going on. I don't really pay attention to British politics, but there was something going on where reporters were camped outside his house, and they were hoping to get an image of him to ask questions. And here he comes dawdling out in what looks like half relaxing wear, half evening wear, with a tray of tea and biscuits, and just comes himself. Not any service like that comes out and address reporters. I'm not here to answer any questions. I'm just here to give you tea. Would you like some tea? Here's some tea. It's very good. And then slowly the reporter's like, "But we have questions." They're like, no questions. Would you like some tea? It's very cold out here. Would you like some tea? And they eventually all just fell into it. It's like, sure, yeah, great. And they're all having tea together. Not a question answered.
That was all because of another racial slur, or maybe not a racial slur, but another slur where he said that burqas were like letterboxes and bank robbers.
Wow.
And that's why they were trying to, So, yeah. Anyway, sorry, Tony.
That's okay. I want you, when you say Boris knows what he's doing, he knows what he's doing in terms of cultivating his image.
Yeah.
But he has absolutely no competence when it comes to running a country.
Not a good start, Boris.
No, I agree absolutely. That's what I meant, as in he knows what he's doing in terms of presenting himself as a particular personality, and but yeah, no, I see how that might not have been completely clear. And Jessica G, bite me. All the points you want.
That's one thing I wish our Senate, I wish our Congress was more like Parliament. And there was because I love watching this because those cats will get snarky. They will get snarky as fuck. And when Boris's, I think one of his Brexit plans was rejected and was completely shut down, he's utterly defeated in there. And then as he's walking away, I guess going back to his seat, someone just yelled out, "Not a good start, Boris."
I love watching that.
What was it? What was the government that got into an actual fist fight?
Oh, I think it was the Taiwan.
Yeah.
Taiwan. Yeah.
Taiwan generally has quite massive fights.
Brawls. It's pretty funny. The Prime Minister's Questions is the live broadcast. I think it's weekly in the UK, where they ask the questions and it gets really heated. And you've got, I can't remember the guy's name, the Speaker of the House, and he's like, "Oh, order," that guy. But the Irish version, there was one a while back, and I don't recall the guy's name, but he was given an address, and he was really angry at another guy in the Irish Parliament, the Dáil, we call it. And he turned around and he goes, "And I am now going to use very unparliamentary language, and I will say, 'Fuck you, Deputy Stag, fuck you.'" And the Ceann Comhairle, which is the Speaker of the House, turned around to me and goes, "I would like you to retract that most unparliamentary language." He goes, "I do apologize, and I retract it, but fuck you, Deputy Stag."
the prefacing. I'm so sorry to use such terrible language, and I know it's completely unparliamentary for me to say this. Fuck you.
Yeah.
That has got to be the most Monty Python thing that has ever happened.
Reginald, I disagree.
Reginald. Oh yeah, what is it? Drive-by argument. Reginald, I disagree. I disagree.
There's a famous exchange from Australian Parliament where one of the members of Parliament, said, And the member for so, if the member for so and so thinks that's a good idea, he has the brains of a sheep. and there was an objection that this was unparliamentary language, and the speaker said, called on the guy to retract the statement, and he said, "Very well, I retract the statement. The member for so and so hasn't the brains of a sheep."
Hey, not to take a hard left turn here, but I've been looking at the live chat, and I'm just, if somebody can clarify, is S. Thurston a flat earther?
No idea.
S. Thurston.
I could not tell you who that is.
Yeah, because they've got a back and forth going with Raichi, and I'm not really sure. I wonder if somebody could clarify that for me, because I'm only glancing, and I don't want to make an assumption that he's a flat earther, or whoever they are is a flat earther.
No, he seems to be giving reasonably accurate information.
Well, that automatically means that he's not a flat earther. He's giving reasonably accurate information.
Just for those of you out there who care, in about 7 minutes from now, there's a SpaceX Starlink mission launching, just so you guys are aware. Because I know some people here are space nerds.
Space nerds. All right, so I know you, Irish, you wanted to talk about the Netflix drama.
Cuticles.
Cuticles. Yep. Cuticles.
If you're talking about this French movie, this French dance movie that came out, I actually gave it a watch, and just because I had to know what all the hubbub was. And yes, I agree that the marketing was not done well, but then again, the marketing material that was delivered to Netflix came from the production company behind it, and they the production's marketing company, and you're looking at basically kind of like where think about what we produce here in America, like Step Up and movies like that. Okay, this was, and what it really came down to, what I looked at is two things I took away from this French film is, one, this is another country's interpretation of American style dancing. Like they see it, they see our pop culture, and they see what our artists do and what our dancers do, and this is kids imitating that, because that is what is popular online, on TikTok, on YouTube, and on reality television. So this is another country's interpretation of what we are doing here in America, and the viewpoint of conservative religious types, because the main girl in this, who's 11 years old, is very conservative, is a very conservative Muslim, and the reaction of that conservative mentality to the expressive dance that is exemplified here in America, and kind of that the two, one being freedom of expression, the other being the expression of their faith, and how the two come into conflict. That is the primary story of this movie. Now, what you see a lot in the movie is kids, or young children, imitating what they see other people and celebrities and dance celebrities and people and music videos. They are imitating that. That is what they view as popular, and that is what the filmmakers came across. I think the only problem was people took issue with the marketing images, because they cut the poster that came out. What they literally cut images out of the film and Photoshop them together to create a movie poster. And some of those poses may say, "Oh, it looks like this, it looks like this," but that is not what the film is about at all. And in fact, not a lot of emphasis was really put on that within the movie. So, I mean, I can see why people at first glance might have had the judgments that they had about this thing, but it really is more about freedom of expression versus conservative values. That's what the focus of the movie is about.
I think the marketing in the States is what caused issue with the reception of the film. I haven't seen it simply because I don't have time to watch movies outside of the horror films that I have to watch for JL's podcasts. And at first glance, kind of doing a surface look at what's going on with this film, looking at the marketing, yeah, I could see why people would be very upset because the marketing poster that came out was very, very overly sexualized. And I could see why people would think that this would be, oh, we're trying to normalize pedophilia, or we're trying to normalize the sexualization of children. So I understand why people would be upset about it. But the argument that, well, this film is just, pedophiles or people who want to abuse children will take this and they'll use that. Okay, sure. But you know what else they'll do? They'll take anything that shows children and use that in the same manner. So just because you have a deviant group that will do, quote, bad things doesn't necessarily mean that the intention of the film was meant to do that. So Jessica G says he forces you to watch horror movies. That's
that's why I was shaking my head
foul. But that's all I'm going to say about it because I haven't seen the film. I don't know much more about it than what I've read and what I've seen. Like the brief marketing and what Netflix has said about it. It was a stupid move to market that film. Even if I'm Netflix and a production company comes to me and shows me this stuff, I'm sending it back saying I'm not marketing the film this way. Or I'm not showing this film. If this is really a representation of what the film is about, I'm not showing this film. Period.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the misstep was. But Americans as a whole tend to, when they see something they don't like, they tend to jump on it and dogpile it as hardcore as they can. It's like, and then the reaction is always way over the top as to where it should have been. And I can guarantee you, or I would put money down that the vast majority that decried the film never actually watched the movie. And I was willing to give it a chance. And ultimately it just comes out, this was a feel-good movie about kids being influenced or being taught that freedom of expression is an okay thing in the face of, and it really came out on the freedom of expression being a good thing, and that antiquated conservative, repress yourself, repress your identity, repress who you are. These are negative things. So it actually came out in favor of, freedom of expression and finding who you are and discovering your identity. It was big on that. That was the focus
I do
of the
think
story.
that's
and the struggles of children in the face of that. I do think
that's a little dangerous talking about because as I understand it, the thing that most people took issue with was the little girls twerking, to which.
Yeah, but we were seeing that shit with Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, but how old was Miley Cyrus when she did that?
Early 20s?
Not old enough to drink. I'll say that.
No. She was in her early 20s.
When the whole twerking thing came out?
The Robin Thicke and all that? Yeah, she was in her mid-20s, I think. I want to say she was around like 25.
I don't know. I don't really pay attention to Miley Cyrus.
I don't either. But the point is,
given the backlash she got from doing things like that, and appearing the way she did,
I absolutely agree that there is a double standard here. Like with that Miley Cyrus thing specifically, everybody wanted to jump on her about this, but not jump on Robin Thicke. It's like, dude, he was there too. He was partaking in the exact same thing, but because she, as a woman, is expressing sexual prowess, that's considered bad. Yet when a man does that, we're okay with that, right? So that argument, I mean, completely disagree. I don't have a problem with Miley Cyrus. I don't have a problem with Miley Cyrus performing the art in which she sees fit. I don't have a problem with her flexing her sexuality. But again, we're talking about somebody who is in her, I want to say was in her mid-20s, versus an 11-year-old child who, I don't know, man. I think it's a little dangerous to talk about sexual expression with children. It's one thing to say, hey, look, you are going to be who you are when you get there. It's cool to discover yourself, your sexuality, whatever. That's cool to have those because obviously children, when they hit that prepubescent and then go through puberty, all that stuff is happening. And to have a conversation about that, I'm okay with. Hey, you know, because I've got kids that are getting into that age or getting into that point in life where bodies are changing, hormones are happening, and they're asking questions. So yeah, but that's a private conversation that I'm having with my children to encourage, you know, something like twerking with an 11-year-old. That to me, I understand the concern there, because if I saw my children on some film twerking, I'd lose my fucking shit. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Not my kids, but what the fuck is wrong with you people for putting that out there? And then, you know, we have these discussions. Maybe that's a little prudish of me, and I fully accept that. I just think that, yes, I can understand why putting an 11-year-old on film twerking is an issue.
Well, so far for a film that Irish has wanted to talk about, there's not been a lot of Irish in this discussion.
That's
true.
I'm
just going to throw that out there.
Because actually listening to both of your points has, I guess, solidified my position somewhat on it. And here's my hot take, right? So starting with what JL said. So I definitely understand the premise of the movie. The idea is to show, you know, these children in these situations. And this is a very real thing that happens. Children do end up in these situations. They think they're doing something that they want to do or that they'll, you know, want to do in future, but people take advantage of them, etc., etc. And you and I know that. A lot of people know that. You know, this was a movie that got really high awards in the Sundance Film Festival. So film types, intellectuals would understand the premise and understand why it's being made and that it's art and this, that, and the other. The average layperson who watches, you know, comedies on Netflix sees a video, a movie with prepubescent girls in, and I mean, I've seen bits of it. I didn't watch the movie, but I've seen bits of the movie on Netflix. We clicked through and, you know, we didn't listen to it. We just watched little bits of it. And you have these children in what can only be described as hypersexualized positions and situations and dances and scenarios with older men and things like that. And it's, as a lay person looking at, all you are seeing is this child in extremely revealing clothing doing extremely sexualized activities. And so for the average individual who doesn't maybe understand how, you know, artistic film is and maybe doesn't understand the premise and the social discussion that's going on outside of the visuals of the movie, it would, of course, cause outrage. So I'll take, for example, so my oldest brother, he's 10 years my senior, very intelligent person. He's at the absolute top of his field. He's one of the head people in the Irish ambulance service. So, you know, he's a very intelligent person, amazing professional, incredible father. So he's got two young girls, one in a wheelchair and one younger who's not in a wheelchair. If I was to show him that movie, and now he's not into movies, he wouldn't be an artistic type per se, he would be shocked by that, because all he would see is, oh my God, that could be my little girl. Like, that's disgusting. How could anybody enjoy that? Whereas if I was to go back to when I was, you know, 19 and show it to my film production professor, she would probably, you know, agree with the premise of the movie and explain why they made it and why it's made in a certain way and what it's supposed to represent. So I think the problem is, for a movie like that, it has its place. It's not something that I personally like. I mean, you know, it is what it is, but it has its place among the artistic film set, I think, which is, I think, evidenced by the whole Rotten Tomatoes thing that's going on. They gave it 99%. The general public gave it 3%. So what that shows us straight away there is these artistic film buffs who are into film and understand the art behind film and why films are made the way they are, gave it a very high rating, whereas the average person, the lay person, absolutely shat all over it. And I understand why they did it. And in fact, I can agree with them, because the average person watches a movie for comic relief or just to enjoy a movie. Whereas those of us who are into film and enjoy film for the visuals and the hidden stories and the, you know, all of these different things, we can see why they've made it that way. But Joe Blogs on the street goes home, has a beer, switches on Netflix, goes, oh, what's this? Clicks it and goes, Jesus, what is this shit? You know what I mean? So I definitely see why people are upset about it. I agree with them. For the most part, I think a lot of people don't understand the premise of the movie or why they made it, but I agree with the shock, I guess, because it's not something that people want to see. Nobody wants to, well, some people do, unfortunately, but most people don't want to see a prepubescent child in a hypersexualized situation. So I think Netflix definitely is not the platform for it. Netflix is a consumer product for people who want to go and be entertained by a movie. The standard. It's like if you. Oh wait, no, I was going to go on a different tangent, but never mind. Most people watch Netflix to have some just general entertainment after a long day at work, watch Breaking Bad or whatever, and then they flick onto this movie and it's children in these hypersexualized situations. I don't blame them for being angry, and I agree with them. It's not fair to put it on a platform like that to those people who might not know what it is or whatever, or might not understand the idea behind the movie. So I definitely don't think it should be on Netflix. I think it's not the place for it. Do I think there is a place for it? I wouldn't make it. I wouldn't make that movie. I wouldn't take that risk. And I think the fact that there is real life children in the movie doing these actions, there is ramifications there. Yes, we all understand the art behind it and everything, but this child has been put in a situation where they are going to be seen as a sexual object by other people, even though the idea of the movie is to say, like, put it this way, the idea of the movie is to say this is the issues with hypersexualization of children, the dangers of it, what children think, how children can't make up their own mind about these things, and the conservative nature of the general public, etc., etc. A person sitting down watching that for their own twisted enjoyment isn't going to go, actually, I see the premise here, and perhaps the idea behind this is blah blah blah. They're not looking at it for that. They're not watching it for that. They're watching it for enjoyment, for other reasons. And I just don't think it should be on Netflix. And I think the rating that it's been given, I don't know if it's been given an R rating, but I know the rating changed to suit, I think for the American market it changed to like an R rating or something like that. And I just don't think it's the place for it. I don't think it's an artistic movie, I guess. Sundance, yeah, fine, stick it on there, but I think Netflix is definitely not the place for it. So yeah, that's my mini rant on that one.
It kind of brings up or it glances on the topic of conversation, like around movies like The Trouble with Being Born, which was a recent one that popped up on my feed, and I had to get into that. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with that one. It's a German-Austrian production, sci-fi drama about a father who replaces his missing daughter. His daughter, like his 10-year-old daughter, went missing 10 years ago, and the father creates or has created an android that resembles her.
I remember that.
And then the relationship with the father and the android that looks like his 10-year-old daughter devolves into a sexual relationship. And obviously that itself, I think, is on a different spectrum. When you hold that there are films out there like that, and then compare them to a film like Cuties, like that, films like that, I still don't know where I land on that from the separate. It was a challenging film for separating art from intention in that respect. But I don't think Cuties fell into that. And I hate the name. The name sounds silly. I know the name is different in French, and in French it actually doesn't directly translate to cuties. I think that was the best English word that they could come up with. That I don't know. I can't remember. I know that the French word started with an M. I'm not sure, but I think there obviously is a line, and I think the line is, as far as art goes, is obviously art is subjective. So, but people are entitled to, or people are allowed to feel what they feel, and if they reject it, they're allowed to reject it. I think that marketing in America needs to be a bit more, I think, less algorithmic and more actual person looking at what's going on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just now getting all of the messages from Discord, because I don't run Discord while I'm running the stream, because it takes up bandwidth. So no, I'm not ignoring anybody. I promise. Well, except maybe Irish Demon.
No surprise there.
Tony, you've been awfully quiet on this one here. I'm curious to get a scientific point of view.
So, well, I'm really not very well informed about this subject. I haven't seen the advertising campaign, and I haven't seen the film. But two things that occur to me out of the discussion so far. Um, uh, a the way the free market works is if people don't want a product, they don't consume it.
Fair.
So, when you say this shouldn't be on Netflix, I actually really object to that. If people don't want to watch it, they don't have to. Just because it's on Netflix doesn't mean that they have to watch it. And if they're unhappy with it, they're allowed to express their dissatisfaction with it. The question of whether or not, we already have standards in place. We have protocols in place that are supposed to identify child pornography or activities that put children at risk. If it's gotten if a work of art has gotten past those protocols, then I think it's a bit arbitrary to decide, well, actually, I'm not happy with those protocols now. Perhaps there is a discussion. I understand that actually, the assignment of ratings is something of a mystery and not a very accountable process. So there is a discussion to be had about that. The third point that I would say is that 11-year-old girls may, if you wake up early on a Saturday morning and you decide to watch a music video channel, you're going to see the most outrageous dances and costumes, and kids are allowed to watch those. They will see those, and they will see that a woman. That's a desirable man. These are the people I should emulate, and this is how I should move in order to maximize my own appeal to people. And they may not even be thinking in sexual terms. Almost certainly they aren't. But it's a bit rich to sort of attack the film for pointing out that we have a media setup that doesn't really that doesn't take accountability for the stuff that it's depicting. And actually, we have very disparate standards between the level of violence that we're happy watching an 11-year-old watching, as opposed to the amount of sex we're happy letting an 11-year-old watch. And I'm reminded actually a little bit of the story about 50 Shades of Grey in France. 50 Shades of Grey in France was awarded a PG rating, and it almost wasn't. It was almost given a G rating. Because the French just didn't see it as that provocative. They didn't see that there was anything in it that kids shouldn't be able to see. And so a lot of this is culturally informed, and I think that sort of perhaps there's and the French are coming at this from a very different perspective from where we are. But I think as a culture, America, Australia, Britain are quite uptight about sex, and perhaps we should be a little more relaxed about the entire subject, not in the sense of allowing kids to be put in vulnerable situations, but in allowing them to have open conversation. This isn't something you should feel ashamed about or hide,
Right.
this is something you can talk about and you can approach as an open subject. So I feel like there is a deeper conversation to be had around this. But again, I haven't seen this film and I haven't seen the marketing.
Well, no.
So
So you bring up some amazing points, especially in the American viewpoints of what is acceptable for children or people in general to watch. Talking about we're okay with showing people, like if you have a movie that, for instance, is hyper violent, regardless of the gore factor of it, but if there's a lot of guns and shooting and whatnot, PG-13. But the second you show a naked woman's ass in that PG-13 film, now we're teetering on that R rating. Or if we have a sex scene in there, I was, well, no, we can't have children looking at boobs. We can have children looking at people blowing people up, but boobs, nope, can't do it.
yeah.
So yeah, that is a very interesting, and that's where we. So part of the conversation that we're having with this is that's kind of where we need to be, especially in the States. Why we're so prudish about sex in the States.
Well, that's that puritanical foundation of this country.
And I will say that I think that it's something of an Anglo-Saxon trait, right? Anglo-Saxon I use in kind of a loosish term, but English-driven culture. There's a lot of repression in English culture and in Australian culture. And I think it's something we could constructively look at and see whether or not we're in the right spot. Because part of what going back to sort of the charity stream we had in the Trevor Project, I feel allows that to happen is this pervasive sexual guilt, right? That and that can very easily be warped. That can very easily turn into a very negative force in somebody's life, particularly if there's some other element of shame associated with somebody's sexual identity. So I kind of think that we could have a more open social approach to the whole idea of sex and sexuality than we do now, and it would work better from my perspective.
I would say also here in the States, given our health courses and how we teach these things in school, there's so much ridiculous. There are many schools that do not have health programs. The vast majority don't have health programs at all, and those that do have health programs are heavily restricted as to what they can teach kids or what they can show kids as far as bringing them to terms with human sexuality, and it focuses on sex and understanding all the intricate complexities of human sexuality. We're so I mean, you say that British is repressed. You're like, America is still, even now, 2020, we are still heavily rooted in the puritanical foundations of this nation and terrified of sexuality, terrified of the trans debate is still a fucking debate that we're having. The gay debate is still a debate that we're having. Why is this a thing? I'm not 100% sure. It's because of those antiquated puritanical values that we have. We can't even teach kids in high school about proper sexuality, and as far as from a social standpoint and from a personal standpoint, emotional standpoint, because parents are so terrified that teaching them will make them go out and do it. So,
can I just address a comment in the chat? Kenny said, just in reference, I believe, to that film. He said, sorry, I've lost it. These are children having their lives put public before they have the rights to make their own. I think that's a really good point with regard to the movie. When you pull it down to its most basic level, the positions that these children are put into, and by obviously their parents had to consent, the filmmakers, this is something that's going to be real and out there forever. Before those children were fully aware of what they were doing, as far as they could see, they were going to look cool dancing in a movie.
Right.
and being the star of a movie that's going to be on Netflix for millions of people to see. But they weren't, I believe, weren't able to make the decision to realize fully what the the impact of this would be on them in their future. Like if a child, like I don't know, if my neighbor had a little kid and they were out there, dancing, whatever they were doing, like the dancing in the movie, whatever. It happens and it's gone and that's that. But this is a big movie that's going to be seen by millions of people all over the world. It's always going to exist. There's always going to be a trace of it online. And who knows, in 20 years or 10 years, that child might look back on that movie and go, oh my God, I was exploited there. I could not have made an informed decision on that. And so we're trusting their parents to make that decision on their behalf and say, yep, I think it's fine for my child to be in this movie. And that's something that I find concerning. That 11-year-old child.
Okay, I'm going to challenge that. Okay, so, parents have a right to parent, right? They have, we hold them responsible for the decisions that they make. Now, and as you point out, there are, if you have such concerns, have you raised these with the French authorities? Do you think that this amounts to child abuse? Have you called the French authorities to report them? If not, why not? If you're so concerned that this is so bad, then clearly these parents and these filmmakers are guilty of some sort of crime in putting these children in this situation. If they're not, then surely this is a matter of discretion for the parents. The parents get to make, at the point where the kids can't make their own decisions, we trust parents to do this. Now, some parents make really, really bad decisions, but, some parents make really, really bad decisions that don't involve films, but we don't second guess them, right?
Mm.
I really see this as, and whether or not you think this is a bad decision is to some extent informed by your cultural perception of whether or not what's going on is appropriate. And again, I can only emphasize that our cultural attitude of what is or is not appropriate for children is culturally informed. It is not an externally dictated moral reality. There can exist a divergence of opinion as to whether or not this is an appropriate thing for somebody to allow to happen to their child. And clearly, the people who allowed this to happen to their children made a decision on that. Mm-hmm. I just think we can go to. You guys would be very down on people saying, well, actually control of kids needs to be taken away from their parents and we need to dictate to them how they're going to raise their children. I think that you, Irish and Johnny O, I think you would be very down on that as a concept.
Sure,
you don't like dictatorial. So I'm just a bit. Again, I haven't seen the film. I haven't seen the marketing material. But yeah, I'm just very cautious about coming up to a parent from not knowing anything about their circumstances and going, "You're just a bad person, and you shouldn't have done this." Also, there are two parents, so they had to agree on this. But anyway.
So what?
Yeah, ultimately, ultimately, I didn't think there was a major issue with it. It was the marketing was bad, but the film was the film was no different than watching Maddie Ziegler do interpretive dance in a Saya video. So,
has anybody here seen Little Miss Sunshine?
Yeah, Abigail Breslin. Yep.
Yeah. So in Little Miss Sunshine, the parents let the grandfather take the little girl off to practice the dance moves, and for some reason they all think that that's a great idea. Though you might have thought that would go wrong given how the grandfather behaves. And at the end, she gets up at the beauty pageant and she does what's basically a striptease. And all the family, without taking her clothes off, she's basically doing pole dancing moves. And the entire family get up and they dance with her on the stage while everybody looks on horrified. And it's just this. The family have come through this journey. The grandfather died on the journey, but they've decided that this is an expression of what the grandfather was like, and how he lived his life, and so they're going to they're just going to roll with it. It To me, it's a touching moment. Is Abigail Breslin traumatized by having been in this role? Was that bad parenting on her parents' part? I don't think so.
Sure, and just for clarity, I agree with you, Tony. That absolutely trying to take away the parents' rights to raise their children in the manner in which they want, right? As long as there's no danger or harm being done to these children. I agree with you. And again, I guess I'm not necessarily saying that, because I haven't seen the film either. I'm not necessarily saying that one way or the next. I just see where I acknowledge that where people could take issue with, especially outside looking in, like Damien was talking about, not being film buffs or being filmmakers or someone who looking at the art of the film, or more so looking at the content. I can see where they would take issue with it. I'm not necessarily, again, I haven't seen this, so I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm resigned to people being idiots. Okay, so if idiots want to turn up and and castigate a film, fine. If some idiots want to make an inappropriate film and get castigated for it, that's their right too. It sounds like at least one of these groups is being an idiot in this particular point in time. But I don't get exercised by people being idiots. So it's anyway.
Well, to be fair, if it wasn't for idiots, none of us would have channels.
True. This is true. Speaking of which, make sure that you do go subscribe to all 4 channels so you never miss an episode of the 4 Beardsmen. Next week we'll be on Irish Demon's channel. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And then after that, we'll be on my channel, and then PhD Tony's, and then so on, and so on, and so on.
So, Irish, you said you've got some stuff for university you got to get done, or?
Yeah, I've got to finish off. It's finished. I'm doing a case study at the moment on a serial killer, and I was thinking maybe possibly next week we might talk a little bit of psychology, and I was thinking maybe we could talk about Edmund Kemper, also known as the co-ed killer. So that's who I'm. Hardcore. Well, that's who I'm studying at the moment for my case study, and I want to maybe look into the intricacies of the human brain and what causes people to do some of the things that they do. In Kemper's case, somebody who is would appear to be a very intelligent person. I believe he got an IQ score of 146 and appeared to be a very nice and likable person. And, at times I had to watch all of his interviews and stuff like that as part of the project. And, watching the interviews, you actually begin to like this person. He's a very nice, likable dude. And then you remember what he did. And I want to challenge that view and see what people have to say. So what I might suggest is, because thankfully we do get mostly the same people coming back to our channels, check out Edmund Kemper, if you want to. Obviously, it's quite shocking material. It's obviously a very well-known story. There's some movies loosely based on it and things like that. Maybe check out Edmund Kemper. Let me know what you think, and we might talk about that next weekend.
He was the co-ed killer.
The co-ed killer, yeah.
Really, really, really bad individual.
Isn't he one of the the test cases as to why we believe sociopathy
in
can't be
when the
cured?
with the yeah when the FBI he was instrumental in opening the door to the study of abnormal psychology and
Yeah.
developing profile techniques.
Mhm.
The FBI utilized him because he was the most agreeable and willing to work with the FBI and not bullshit anybody or he was whether it was his narcissism or just a need to kind of talk about these things that he himself didn't fully understand why he was the way he was, but he was
Yep.
as curious as everybody else because as Irish mentioned, he's an extraordinarily intelligent individual, and part of that intelligence comes with his natural curiosity, and he wanted to learn about himself as much as other people wanted to learn about him, and so he jumped at the opportunity to try and help other people to get insight about why he was the way he was.
Yeah.
But yeah,
One of the interesting things about him is after his initial murders, which was his grandparents, he spent some time in a facility. He learned how to manipulate the psychiatrists into believing that he was now sane and that he was recovered. And then he went about learning from other murderers and stuff about how to cover his tracks. So he went to great lengths to cover up what he was doing and to not get caught. And he was successful in doing so for a long time. And then the final murders, which was his mother and his mother's friend, when they were carried out, he remarked that he now had nothing left to kill for. He had no reason to do it any longer, so he was happy to go to jail. He actually asked for the death penalty. Now, it's been postulated that he asked for the death penalty knowing full well that he wouldn't get it because it was suspended in California at the time. But it's just a really, really interesting story. And it's from my time working in the court system with the prison system and stuff like that, and meeting a lot of murderers. I've met quite a few murderers and in fact a couple of serial killers. And the reality is when you're walking down the street, you are probably passing 10 people in 100, or maybe probably less, but maybe 2 or 3 in 100 that have the potential for that kind of behavior. So it's just really interesting, and I think it'd be a really fun thing to have a chat about. And I look forward to seeing you guys there next Sunday on my channel.
Everybody's favorite serial killer. That should be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that would actually be a really interesting topic for discussion. But JL, this is a part where you do your thing because this is your channel, sir.
Yes. So, I know people got to go off. I know it's getting late over there on Tony's side, and Irish has got some stuff he got to do, and I've got to get my day started, same as Johnny. So if anybody wants to close things out, we'll start with PhD Tony. Do you got anything you want to say before we close it out?
Always a pleasure. Sorry if I snapped at people.
Oh no, you're
a
good.
Little bit.
No,
okay. Hopefully, hopefully releasing a video on gas pressure coming up this week. So that'll be good. And always great to have Jessica G in the channel.
No, it's not.
I think Tony and I need to team up because apparently we're the best.
Absolutely.
I disagree with the method in which votes are counted and the bias of the judge behind them, but Jessica G is still entertaining.
No, she's not.
Johnny, what do you got coming up?
I've got a couple things coming up. I got a few of the Plot Hole Juniors videos in the works. Constance wants to do another snake video. She wants to talk about why she wants a snake and why her daddy won't let her have one. Irish, am I still doing a video for you? You still want me to do that?
Yeah, I'd love
okay,
that.
So
I would love. So I've had JL do one, and I'd love for you and Tony at some stage to maybe do one as well, and like something like what JL did, which was awesome. And anybody else out there who's maybe a new creator or somebody that wants to get a little bit of the tiny amount of exposure that I may be able to give you, you're more than welcome to hit me up on on Discord, and I'd be delighted to feature you on my channel. Skeptic Dank is just doing a video at the moment. He's finishing it up on his cold moonlight experiment, which is going to be awesome, and I'm really looking forward to that. So I'll see if maybe he'll allow me to mirror that on my channel. I'd love to display that, but yeah, so it'd be great to have some more individuals come on board and take some of the workload off.
Yeah. Other than that,
oh, morning, Munchkin.
You say hi. Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Hello. That's a tired face right there.
Yeah, she just woke up from a long sleeps, huh? Yeah. But yeah, that's what I got coming up. I got Jeremy returns to the Plot Hole on Friday, so the Plot Hole podcast on rockmetaltalk.com. The original 2 Plot Hole idiots will be back in full swing. It's going to be a lot of fun. What else I got coming up? Oh, more unpopular opinions. I think I might actually make some people mad with the next one. I know I've said that the last time, and I thought I would last time, but this time I really think I'm going to make some people angry. So,
as it turns out, the last couple of people have been like, "Yeah, we agree with that. We
yeah,
agree
right."
with that.
They're all like, "Yeah, what's so unpopular about these opinions?"
Awesome. Demon, what you got coming up?
So I went back to work last Thursday, so my production has ground to a halt at the moment. And yesterday I couldn't talk, so I didn't do anything yesterday. So I'm just kind of shoot it and see what happens. I'm going to see what's out there in the wonderful world of morons. And I might do another Karen video. They're always a lot of fun. And yeah, we'll just see how we go from there. You know me, I just kind of take it as it comes. And I'm looking at you, Rachie. Rachie out there, I would love to have you on for an interview. Rachie just seems like one of the nicest people out there. And I would love to have you on for an interview, just for a chat, not putting you on the spot or anything like that. Just to, yeah, because you seem like a really, really cool lady. And we've chatted a lot and stuff, and it would be great to have you on for just for a bit of banter. It'd be really nice. So hopefully we'll have an interview. And yeah, see how we go from there.
Awesome. I myself, I do actually have a video coming up, a video response to the Muslim skeptic, thinking that he can debunk atheists with one solid point, that he can shut down our arguments. And I'll be I'm trying to get that finished up edit-wise, so that'll be dropping here pretty soon. And after that, I have a second video, which I'm already working on, which will be a response to the original Flat Earth Flyer, back from the late 1800s.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to putting that one together. I think that one will be fun. And of course, Johnny did mention it earlier, this week, this 8 p.m. Central Time, will be the first live stream event for my podcast, Week in Horror. So if you are a horror film fan, I really hope you stop by. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a big live stream event. We've got industry guests popping by. We've got trivia. We've got prizes. Very pricey prizes that I dumped quite a bit of money on to make sure that these things happen and make sure that they're really worth it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Big first live stream event for our season finale. The movies we'll be talking about are Seven, The Void, Shaun of the Dead, and Carnival of Souls. So if you want to pop by, check those movies out and brush up on the trivia on that, because this is going to be a good one. So I hope to see everybody there. Other than that, pretty much, checking out the streams to see what's going on. But if that's going to be it, guys, then thank you, everybody in the live stream, for joining us for another edition of the Four Beardsmen of the Apocalypse. Like Johnny said, we're going to be on Irish's Demon next week.
Yep.
Irish channel next week.
We will be on Irish's Demon next week, yes.
Irish's Demon? Yeah, Irish's Demon, blah, blah, blah. Anticipate, yeah? Is that how it goes?
Yes, correct.
Thank you all so much. Y'all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.